Hey guys, what's going on? It's the Eradicator, and in today's video I am going to react to Skull and Bones How Exploration Works. This is a video that was posted on IGN for Gamescom 2022. Now, I normally don't do reaction videos like this on the channel, but I am extremely excited about Skull and Bones. I'm gonna make another video probably next week about Skull and Bones as well, where I'll go further into details as of why there shouldn't be that hate around this game, because I think that a lot of people have a couple of misconceptions about what it is. But anyway, that is not the topic of this video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how exploration works in this game, which is going to be an essential part of creating your piracy or your pirate legacy. So let's have a look, let's listen to what they're saying, and I'll be interrupting the video and talk about it. Of course, if you want to watch the full video with no interruption, I will put the link in the description down below. So let's have a look and let's get started.
With the waves beneath you and the wind in your sails, the Indian Ocean is yours to fully explore in Skull and Bones.
Now, this is something I'm already very excited about, the Indian Ocean, which also has had a lot of piracy and still has nowadays as well. But it's something that we don't usually see or think about when we think of pirates. Because when you think of pirates, you think, of course, of the Caribbean, but there were also a lot of this happening in the Indian Ocean, a lot of privateers and corsair activity as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, around the Seychelles and Madagascar as well. Very interesting part of the world when it comes to sailing and piracy, and I like already that change compared to what you would normally think of when it comes to piracy.
But as we recently learned, most of Ubisoft's upcoming pirate simulator takes place at sea.
Of course, it should, right? It's a piracy game.
Aside from water, and, well, more water. We spoke to developers at Ubisoft Singapore to find out.
Alright, so let's see what the developers have to say here.
Gameplay on land is about socializing, crafting, building up your fleet, and taking contracts in the game, in either a den or the outposts.
Now, so basically what they mean here is that these are going to be the equivalent of landing zones that you see, for example, in the game, like Star Citizen. I like the idea of crafting, which is going to be, building your own ship or improving your ship as well, putting on the right weapons or the right armor. All of that is going to be, of course, doable based on the resources that you will find or that you will be buying or trading via the people that you'll be meeting at those landing zones. And I like also the idea of socializing, meeting other pirates or NPCs, because it shouldn't be just about your ship, but also sometimes, when you're a pirate, you want to just land and have a good time and relax, and that's what that's going to be allowing us to do.
Despite the majority of Skull and Bones map being made up of ocean, you can step off your ship and walk on dry land. Not every island you see is explorable.
Now, some people were crying, oh no, not everything is explorable. Look, there's also something that what do we want exactly, right? Do we want to have some procedurally generated random content that's going to be looking dull and boring, or do you want to see handcrafted places based on real places that you're going to be exploring? That's more what I'm interested in, We're talking about an entire ocean, the Indian Ocean, that they are recreating here on this game. So that's why it makes sense that not everything is explorable. Plus, maybe you don't want to be exploring everything. There are some real islands around the world, especially around the Indian Ocean. Thinking of some islands in the Andaman archipelago near India, where you have some native people who are so rough, that they just attack anyone on sight. Anyone that they see with a boat is getting attacked. You don't want to be landing on those islands, so you never know what's on those islands as well. And just like right now, not every island in the Indian Ocean is explorable, literally because people would actually attack you if you try to do so. It makes sense that not everything is explorable. You don't want to be exploring everything. Some places might be just not hospitable enough, right?
But you can weigh anchor.
So
at
it's important to have like an open mind as well.
Location types that have everything that a pirate needs to prepare for further adventures.
The particularity of the land also is that it offers you a safe zone where nobody can attack you.
So yeah, it's important as well, safe zone, places where you want to be resting, saving your progress perhaps, and it definitely makes sense because these are pirate havens that you want to be, eventually parrots need to be safe as well from other parrots, right? You got a parrot code where you don't attack one another. So it also makes sense. You just can't attack anywhere, anyone, anywhere you want. You are making some enemies at the landing zone, you meet them at the sea. You don't fight where people are taking a rest. It makes sense.
The role of the parrot is to do some back and forth between the safe land, where you can build your ship and customize your ship, but also trade some resources before to go on the hostile ocean to steal precious cargo that then you bring back.
That's what I was talking about, right? So this woman here, Elisabeth Pelen, definitely knows what she is talking about. So you don't attack other parrots online. You want to do that on sea. By the way, I want to talk about this woman a little bit here. Very interesting. Her name is Elisabeth Pelen. She is one of the game directors for Skull and Bones. And the people are very worried about Skull and Bones. I think that this is not going to be very realistic, or that it's not going to be fun. And this is where I disagree. This woman is just like myself. She is from Brittany. Which is the country where I'm from, and she has a very typical name as well. I can tell she is also from Brittany as well. And in Brittany, what we are specialized in is piracy. This is actually my hometown of Saint-Malo, and say, oh, parrots are why? That's because it was a pirate heaven, and there were a lot of these cities. There still are nowadays. A lot of course, we don't have parrots anymore, but see, there's an old ship over there that we can see, kind of similar to what parrot boats are. Right there we go. Right, so there are lots of cities like those in Brittany, my hometown included. And it is in our culture. Piracy is part of our history. It is part of our culture. Sailing on boats is part of our history. Our pirates, or corsairs as they were called, because they were mostly privateers and hired by the French kings and an emperor, but eventually also were pirates, were based on those harbors. The city of Saint-Malo over there is one of the most famous ones. So that's why, seeing that a Breton person is actually being one of the game directors of this game, she is going to be bringing our culture and our history when it comes to piracy into this game, and that is going to be the guarantee of authenticity that a lot of people are a little bit worried about. So that's, in my opinion, being a Breton myself, I cannot imagine that they are not going to be bringing aspects of realisms, because it is, this particular part of history is extremely important to us Breton people here. If you want to be learning more about Breton people, feel free to do so over there on Wikipedia. They tell you everything about it, where we come from, what we do, some of our famous historic people as well. Very interesting, and I think that having someone at the helm of this project who is herself from Brittany and is part of that culture, it's probably deep within her as well, just like it is for everybody out there that I know who is a Breton person as well, is in itself extremely reassuring. So I'm really glad to know that we have someone from that particular country who has this culture helming the game.
So from land,
now, of course, her English is not going to have a wonderful accent, but that's different, right?
Contracts to make some money from some other pirate kingpins. As your infamy begins to spread across the Indian Ocean, you will gain an access to your own pirate lair, from where you can kickstart your ascent to a pirate kingpin by manufacturing and smuggling illegal and high-value goods.
By the way, this is exactly what she's saying here. Yeah, it's something that we knew from the last presentation of Skull and Bones, and this is exactly what happened over there in the city of Saint-Malo, which was the main haven for one of those pirate kingpins called Robert Surcouf, who was very, very infamous, especially with the British. He was very infamous doing piracy in the Indian Ocean, but his lair here, actually one of these mentions here is was actually his mention. Still belongs to, if I remember, still belongs to his offspring nowadays. But anyway, this was his lair. That is where he brought all of his wealth back in his hometown. But then he would go back into the Indian Ocean and raid British ships and steal from them and bring back the booty all the way home. And it's also what you'll be able to do in Skull and Bones, except that, of course, everything will be taking place in the Indian Ocean. Now, this, I was talking about real locations. This is probably not going to be very realistic, but at the same time, I think that we can forgive that. I think that's maybe if some of these locations look a little bit out of the world, it's still going to be bringing some wow factor, making things a little bit less dull and repetitive. Why not? I mean, it's probably the creative direction that they are taking for a few of the locations, but I don't expect all locations to be looking this fantasies like this.
Skull and Bones' world has been designed as a living space that changes as frequently as the tides. Some characters won't stay in one place forever, so you'll need to explore the map to find the right people with the right...
And it definitely makes sense. NPCs should not always be at the same place. They should also be moving from one place to another. And as you travel around the world, this NPC you've created a relationship with, you find out that NPC somewhere else. Let's say you first create a relationship with an NPC at Saint Anne in the Seychelles, and then you go to Singapore and you find that same NPC a couple of weeks later over there, right? It makes sense because they're just traveling all over the place. We'll talk about what we're seeing here, by the way, further down the line, because that is also one of the particular aspects of Skull and Bones that I really like.
Opportunities.
Spread all over the world, you will find some outposts where you can also meet other smugglers or some local rebels fighting against the mega corporations.
Now, what mega corporations are we talking about? We're talking about the East Indies companies that really existed back in those days, belonging either to the French or the Portuguese or the Dutch. Now, the English were present a little bit around this area, but not as much as other nations, and that's also nice for a change, you know, not having this prominent British presence that you always see in Pirate of the Caribbean, and especially when it comes to the Caribbean. It's going to be nice to see other protagonists from other nations. What I hope is that we'll also see other languages as well, not just English, but maybe we could hear some Dutch or Portuguese or French. It would be so fantastic. They could be using also some historic French that people were speaking back in those days as compared to modern languages to add some authenticity. I mean, after all, they'd had so many years to develop this project, so it's not like they didn't have time to do that, right?
We call them ephemeral zones because the NPC you will meet in this outpost won't always be the same because they are also traveling. They are moving from a place to another one. When you connect to Skull and Bones, the first thing to do is look at your map and to see where the trade routes are, where the merchants are, before to select the right ship, provision it, and equip it.
And of course, you know, that map, and that's where exploration is going to play an important part, that map will eventually broaden your scope of possibilities as you explore the game, as you travel around the ocean. What I would like to see also is the possibility to buy pieces of map so that maybe you don't really have to, if you're not into exploration but you want to go to a place yourself, you could perhaps buy that data from other sailors so that, you know, this could complete also your overview of the game world. They did not say if that's a possibility in the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is.
It sails to the direction.
I mean, it would encourage people to explore and then
Sailing,
sell off
trading, and
their
smuggling
explorations.
are all important aspects of a buccaneer career. But what about treasure hunting?
Aha.
Perhaps the most famous of all the pirate pastimes.
There are a lot of treasures hidden in all the outposts, so you need to board some ships and to steal pieces of treasure, or you can also scavenge some wrecks to find other pieces of map according to some drawing and some landmarks.
So that is another aspect of Skull and Bones that I like, the idea of, you know, mystery, puzzles, trying to find, you know, where exactly that place is based on the drawings. How faithful does it look like compared to what you've actually seen in a game? You know, it's not just about fighting. If you are a more peaceful pirate who doesn't want to be combat all the time, more interested in exploration, there's also going to be content for you in Skull and Bones, and it's going to be taking a long time because the game world is going to be pretty big. So just finding that one place that looks exactly like how it looks like on the drawing, either you're lucky and you've already been there before so you know what it is, or it's going to be taking you a long time if you're really motivated finding that particular treasure.
Once you find the right island, you can also use a land compass that will help you to find the location of the treasure.
That's awesome. It's just like Jack Sparrow, you know?
While there are plenty of important things to find and do on land, the core gameplay of Skull and Bones takes place at sea.
Of
With
course.
that in mind, Ubisoft Singapore has put a huge amount of work into making the ocean an interesting and challenging place to explore.
And it should be challenging. The Indian Ocean is not it's a place that's dangerous. First, there's not a lot of land. It's quite empty in the middle. You just have a couple of small islands, so that's also something that we talked about. Some of them are so small or so tiny, it's not even worth landing. Maybe these are the islands that are not explorable that they're talking about, perhaps. But the weather can also be rough. They've got hurricanes that they call cyclones. If you go south of the ocean, I don't know how south we'll be able to go, but there are a couple of islands in the south of the Indian Ocean. I'm thinking of the Kerguelen Islands, for example. The southern you go, remember, it's in the southern atmosphere, so the southern you go, the rougher the wind is going to be. And also, the colder it's going to get. Perhaps your crew would rebel and force you to go north, or maybe it's just going to be the game world limit because the weather is going to be so harsh that nobody will ever want to go there, and it's just going to break your ship. But it's also something that I'd like to see. Anyway,
water, it's essentially a deforming mesh, and that deforming mesh informs the physics. So the boat is actually interacting with the waves. It's not just sailing straight and we add some splashes or like an animated texture. We have other physics properties that each ship will read from. So there's buoyancy and there's drag. So this affects how far into the water the boat will go.
Now, this is really awesome, and it must have taken a lot of work to get the water physics working properly on this game. And it needs to be realistic, but at the same time, it needs to be gamey at the same time. I hope it's not going to be so realistic that it actually literally gets you seasick when you are playing this game. Because I'm a person who is very easily seasick. So I really hope that they will find this right balance between realism and also making it accessible for everybody to enjoy.
We'll go through it. So each ship should feel different based on the size and how heavy it is.
Since sailing is such a focus, the naval mechanics have had to evolve beyond what we saw in Assassin's Creed.
Now, this is something that is the main concern for a lot of people who have been following Skull and Bones. Is a lot of people are Assassin's Creed fans, especially Black Flag, which was an Assassin's Creed game based on piracy. This game is loosely inspired by Black Flag, but it is not a Black Flag MMO. It is different than Black Flag. It aims at being more realistic when it comes to the lore of the game, and also to some aspects when it comes to, for example, sailing. But at the same time, it's a multiplayer game, and that's what I'll be talking about in the next video I'll do about Skull and Bones. Is that because it's an MMO, you cannot expect to have the same features and the same mechanisms that you would have in a single player campaign, in a single player game, which of course is going to be more detailed and is going to be more immersive. You cannot expect the same from an MMO that you would have from a single player game, unfortunately, because technically it's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult, extremely expensive. They probably have tried, which explains why this game has been delayed for quite a long time. But at the same time, eventually they gotta make judgment calls, because sure, Ubisoft is a multi-billion euro company, but at the same time, if at the end of the day, they've got to make a profit, right? We'll talk about that next week anyway.
Things like the weight of your items in the hold and the direction of the wind all need to be taken into account.
Of course, wind should be important to sailing and navigation, but the wind direction actually affects...
And what he's going to say is very interesting.
A good player will navigate better with the wind at their back and tack better, and therefore be a better navigator. So it's just another element of the world that the player needs to be aware of.
But what
Now, I like the idea of, using the wind to give you a bonus, but at the same time, if you're not using it, you can still steer your ship. I like the idea that you don't have to be a navigator. Even if you know nothing about navigating a ship, you'll still be able to steer your ship. It's just that you will not be as good as somebody who knows what they're doing with the wind and what their sails. And I like, this idea of, having to learn these mechanisms if you want to get a boost or a bonus. That's very interesting, but at the same time, making this game accessible to everyone is also important, because in the end, it's a game, you know, it's not reality, so you gotta make it fun.
While the systems are more detailed now, Skull and Bones is definitely not a hardcore
There we go.
simulator.
You don't need to be a sailor to play Skull and Bones and be able to understand what to do, but as you learn how to use the wind better and what that means and what does your weight mean in your cargo and the type of ship that you have, you'll see that there is advantages to being a better captain and a better navigator.
The waves of the Indian Ocean can frequently be calm and beautiful, but Skull and Bones has a full
Ah,
weather system
now
that can
that's what we're
totally
talking about here.
transform its waters.
Oh, look at this. Now, I don't know if this is actually a cutscene or if this really is going to be into the game, but if it is, it's going to be absolutely awesome, because, you know, this game has got to be dangerous, you know. This game has got to bring in some not just combat, but also you need to be aware of the sky. You know, if you see that there's a big black cloud coming in that sounds a bit dangerous and looks dangerous, maybe it's not a good idea to go towards that direction, or maybe it's a better idea to stay on land until the weather goes away. Same with perhaps if you hear, you know, reports of people saying that there's a cyclone happening around the sea at a certain location. Maybe you want to be avoiding that, because otherwise you'll be facing those dangers. Or perhaps this is the kind of thrill that you're looking for when you're playing this game.
We want to make sure that there is different types of weather, so you can have some light rain, you can have incredibly crazy supercell storm, and they will feel dynamic. We want the player to be surprised by that and feel the threats as you normally would at sailing out in the open seas.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Now look at that. There are even some rogue waves
Can be as
apparently.
dangerous as a 100-gunner galleon. So one of Skull and Bones' biggest challenges will be learning how to sail when the water is determined to break your hull.
So not just that, but yeah, you are going to have to learn to sail. You're gonna have to learn to maybe not lose your crew, or what happens, you know, if people die on your boat. I don't know how that is going to be, but I definitely can imagine that weather like that, if you don't know what you're doing, can be a chance to actually lose your ship and start over from, you know, from the beginning with
You
nothing.
enter the storm, obviously the waves get a lot bigger. That means that the certain size of ship you have could affect you. You could flood, you could take damage.
Take damage.
Visibility will change, it'll be a lot darker, so maybe you won't be able to see threats. So yeah, it forces the player to make sure he's equipped properly for the journey with the right ship. Maybe they have enough food and weapons in case they engage someone.
Most open worlds create variety through different biomes and environments, but the ocean setting means Skull and Bones can't really do that. Instead, the developers have paid close attention to the different water states and the iconography of the golden age of piracy to ensure that each area of the map feels new and interesting.
Now that is so cool, and it definitely makes sense, because when you talk about the Indian Ocean, you got lots of different varieties of people that you're gonna meet. As we can see here, we can see some baobabs here, these kind of totems. We're definitely looking at something that looks like Africa, and it definitely makes sense because we're talking about the coast of Zanzibar, the coast of Madagascar, the coast of, you know, Somalia, places closer to Ethiopia as well. And then you've got the Arabic world that you get to discover as well, with, you know, Oman and Yemen, and of course all over the various Indian kingdoms, and then, you know, the Malays and Singapore. I really wonder how far that's going to be going, perhaps all the way down to Indonesia as well. I don't think we'll be able to go through the Philippines, because then that's the Pacific Ocean. But still, and even that, the color of the oceans are not the same as well. So you'll be able to experience that too. The weather is not the same too.
Wind affects the water, the terrain affects the water.
The winds are not the same.
Coastal sea, near the shoreline, the waters will be appropriately different. I can go inland, and then we're using the river technology, which we have two different water technologies. So
using the river technology, very interesting. So we will actually be able to go inland, use a river technology to go inside the lands via the river, maybe use our boats and see how far we can go with our boats based off, you know, how far the rivers go. Now, I'm not very familiar with the African geography, so I don't know if there are any major rivers on the east side of Africa, but there definitely are around India, so it will be something maybe that we'll be able to do.
more than ever, the world needs to feed the water and then feed the player to help him decide how to act. Not only that, we have the biome diversity of the Indian Ocean. So when I go to Africa the water will look and feel different than when
Yes.
you go to the East Indies. You wanted to really show the diversity and the realism of water.
As you travel through different territory for the factions, you'll see the colors changing, the flags, the iconography change around you, so you'll be aware.
Definitely makes sense that we are seeing different flags. As you see here, oh, we're in Farad territory, so you're in French territory. Yes, the French have a very strong presence in the Indian Ocean. We'll see the Portuguese, we'll see the Dutch, probably the British as well, maybe a little bit of the Spanish. So it's going to be really interesting. Probably some of the locals as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some the Omanis and some of the Indians as well. Operating around their territories, so you're gonna have to be dealing with this, dealing with their laws, following them or breaking them, and dealing with the consequences.
Ooh, I'm in Farah territory, or I'm in the French territory. The color schemes and all of that will change. Breaking that up with dynamic events or things that can
Now,
kind of...
dynamic events is also something that we get to see more and more in MMOs and live service games, either triggered by the developers themselves or triggered by player actions, which then would be automatic. Of course, these are those big missions, big events in which players get to group together to achieve a certain result, destroy a game boss perhaps, or a world boss, or perhaps bringing enough resources so that something gets constructed around the map. And I'm really looking forward to seeing also how players are going to be interacting with each other to achieve those goals and results.
Go, ooh, what is that? And get the player to investigate are really important, because you don't want to just sail, you know, for forever as you're moving, because it's a big game. So that's basically what we try to do, is break up the passage with different things you can engage with, helping a merchant out, repairing a ship.
You can be distracted by also broken pieces of map you will find in a bottle.
Ah, that's what
and
we
that
talked about
will,
before,
lead
right?
you towards some treasure hidden on a remote.
Now, I'm going to completely ignore what she's saying here, but look at just how beautiful that is here. And it's also going to be very important when it comes to sailing at night. Because during the day, well, of course, you got everything around you to help you visualize, maybe your compass, but at night is really where you'll know where you're going, because you'll be able to visualize where you're going thanks to the stars. And here we get to see the Milky Way, of course, in the sky. I really hope that the skybox that we get to see at night is faithful and really represents the actual sky that we see really in the ocean based on the different seasons as well, and how the earth rotates around the sun, so that, you know, if you know a little bit about your stars, you will also be able to navigate better at night. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that as well.
Islands, you can find also a ship that is looking for some help. You can decide to escort that ship first before to go back to the prey you had started to shadow. Something
so
we
cool.
implemented also in the game is that sometimes, depending of the value or the properties of the cargo you are transporting, you can attract also specific enemies such as parrot rogues, the rivals who will try to eat a piece of your pie.
Yeah, of course, that definitely makes sense. You're gonna have, of course, so you're gonna have two different kinds of servers in Skull and Bones. You're gonna have PvE and PvP. So people who don't want to do PvP will be dealing with NPCs only, but even the NPCs will eventually, you know, if they get to see that you get some valuable booty in on your ship, they will eventually turn against you. Now you're gonna be sure that players are definitely going to betray you, set up some traps, pretend that they need help, but actually they don't need help, and eventually they will use that to lure you and try to destroy you or rob you. Obviously, that's whole part of the game. As far as I'm concerned, I will play PvP only. I'm not afraid of playing against other players, but this is something that you're gonna have to be watching at as well. You're not really gonna have friends, or making real friends in this game is gonna be really hard, because you're gonna have to always watch your back. Even when you think you're doing a good deed, it's not always going to be paying off.
Skull and Bones' massive open world is beautiful, and you'll want to explore just for the sake of seeing its many
yes.
sights. But exploration is also vital to staying alive, thanks to the survival mechanics that fit into the core gameplay loop.
Now, the survival mechanics here is not going to be, you know, really hardcore. You're not gonna die if you don't eat, but it's still going to be very important to gather resources for at least the well-being of your crew, as that's what they are going to be saying. and also perhaps for getting some much needed bonuses.
You need to constantly be searching for new resources and gathering raw materials to build better
There we
ships,
go.
feed your crew, and advance your infamy.
In the world of Skull and Bones, you will evolve from the status of castaway, stranded on a desert island, to the role of middleman, working for other pirates, and then to the status of kingpin.
That's really what I like with this game, is really the idea of growth, starting from nothing. You know, this idea of starting having a playthrough from 0 to hero, or in this case, from 0 to infamous, I suppose. But this whole idea of progression is very important. How far can you go in this game? When is the top, and how long are you going to be staying at the top until someone else eventually takes your place, or until you lose everything and have to start all over again? That is, in my opinion, what is going to be one of the biggest strengths of this game.
So to rise from the 0 to hero, but
there you go,
you
0 to
first
hero,
have,
exactly.
to collect the resources that will allow you to build your ship and craft your weapon, and that will allow you also to upkeep the morale of your crew, because we have a system of mutiny.
Which is gonna be super
in the game,
cool.
but you can use a small ship and a harpoon to fish some sharks and even some crocodiles.
And that's so cool. I don't think you're gonna be doing much of that later on. I mean, in mid game or in late game, but in early up in the game, you know, that's going to, when you would not be powerful enough to take on other ships. You know, what are you gonna be doing in the game? Well, you'll be taking on wildlife first, and then you're gonna make a name for yourself. Oh, you're this guy who's slain X amount of crocodiles or sharks. Yeah, okay, you're not bad. We'll take you in on our ship. You know. And that's what it's going to be. Obviously, when you'll be the captain of a massive ship with a big crew, you'll be too busy fighting other ships. This will be, you know, a petty task. But at the beginning, that's what you'll be doing. And they've got to make that exciting as well for people to be eager to do that again and again and again. Do the grind. Every game always has a grind eventually. I mean, people were saying, oh, it's not realistic. You just have to throw back. It's okay. You know, you don't want to be making a grind tedious, you want to be making grind fun. If grind is tedious, like a game like in Elite Dangerous, people are going to be complaining about it. That is basically what's going to be the reputation that will be following the game, that the game is all about grind instead of having fun. If the grind is fun, you know, taking down crocodiles, they make a funny sound, they make a funny animation, and then you get to get the crocodile meat in your ship and sell it and do it again, because, you know, it's just fun, then why not? I'm totally up for that as well.
You can use also a large
Plus, it looks super cool.
to chop some trees or to collect some irons. You can also scavenge some wrecks and steal some pieces of ship. And of course, you can plunder the rich merchant company and all their forts to collect big amount of resources. The value of the resources is based on high risk, high reward.
Now, obviously, that's not going to be easy. It will require lots of resources to have massive ships that will be able to do that, friends to do that with you as well. But yeah, high risk, high reward. And I think that every stage of the game needs to be fun, needs to feel and play different. And I see that that's what they're aiming to do.
If the term survival mechanics fills you with dread and memories of depleting thirst meters, don't worry. Skull and Bones isn't that kind of survival game.
Yes.
As a captain, you don't have a status, you don't need to drink or to consume some food yourself. If you don't feed or don't provide your crew with water, after a while, they might turn against you, kick you out of your own ship and maroon you on some island.
Now, what I hope is that they said that we don't have any thirst or hunger meter. What I hope is that we're still gonna have some incentives to eat and drink in the game. Why? For role-playing purposes, right? You want to have that bit pirate vibe. You see what I mean, right? In some kind of tavern on an island with other pirates. And maybe if you do that, this can give you, you know, a little bit of infamy, perhaps, or a little bit of a boost if you don't abuse, you know, alcohol. Obviously, maybe you'll have extra charisma. You're gonna give your orders a little bit better on your ship. But yeah, it's also a good thing that it's not something that you gotta be watching out and be afraid of, because it can be a little bit stressful, and you're gonna be stressed by a lot of other things on this game than having to eat or drink.
But if you feed them properly, and if you cook also some food providing additional temporary buff, you can also increase the speed of your ship and the damages you will deal because they have more energy.
Its massive map may be mostly water, but it looks like there's still plenty to explore in the world of
Yes.
Skull and Bones. For more on Ubisoft's Pirate Sim, why not check out the 7 things you
All
need
right,
to know
well,
about
we'll
Skull and
definitely
Bones.
we'll
Or
definitely
check
be
out the
covering
latest
this game further down the line as well, guys. That is all I had to say about Skull and Bones. A great video from IGN. I will put the link in the description down below for you guys to check out uninterrupted. It's been a 9-minute video. We made it much longer. I hope that's okay with you guys. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I am so looking forward to playing this game. I have already pre-ordered it, and I'll be definitely playing it on this channel, at least on Twitch, and I'll be showing the highlights on this channel. And yeah, for more content about Skull and Bones and other games, of course, don't hesitate to like this video and hit the subscribe button. It's been the Eradicator. I wish you guys a wonderful day. I will see you guys later.